Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on City of the Futures. And we have our world famous speaker, Madam Ali Rice, David Smith, and Professor Dave. Beside that, I just want to share a very bad news. Like World Talent Economic Forum, we are empowering youth. Last 7 years and last 15 years of my career, we developed these World Talent Economic Forums, and we always focus on the youth empowerment, youth movement, youth support. And Bangladesh, like after 17 years of all of the political dilemma and everything, because of the youth communities, because of the youth movement and youth political engagement, we bring new government and we have election next year, February 12th. But before that, today, another youth politician, his name is Hadi, and he killed someone trying to kill him. And right now he is in coma. So as World Talent Economic Forum, we are supporting the youth because we believe you can kill one youth, but you cannot stop the philosophy of the youth communities because they want to build new society. That's why with all of the North American corporation intellectual communities and the thinkers like Dave, like David Smith, like Ali Rice from Europe, we are collaborating with them because we want to build up a better society. We want to build new communities, and we are praying for the early recovery. But right now he is in coma, so we do not know what will happen. So definitely, all of our positive initiatives need to work together to overcome from these challenging situations. So let's go for the discussion for today. So we will discuss about the city of the future. So, Madam Ali Rice, what's your dream to build up the new city?
Okay, well, because I'm quite adverse to cities, really. So I've always lived in the countryside. So for me, smart cities would combine vertical gardens and community orchards, and so that nature wouldn't get left behind, but be pockets of nature. So so it was sustainable, but there was still insects and wildlife, and so I think the thing is for me that I think that there should be a way of making kind of housing that's passive, or so that generates electricity, that that there's health and welfare, so that that people have abilities to kind of get diagnostics, and so that there's a life and work balance, and that the way that people because I think walking, yoga, all being outside are all the things that kind of keep people healthy, and sustainable food that's grown locally, that's that's healthy produce that isn't covered in fertilizers and chemicals. So for me, I think there'll be a kind of an idealistic way of kind of building cities that flourish because of nature and because of growth, and so essentially we don't leave nature behind, as weird as it sounds. So for me, and obviously if everyone's in the same place, that the way that the waste is managed and the energy's kind of is achieved, it's harnesses kind of sustainable development, so that so that it's productive, efficient. So for me, so I think it's essentially driven by nature, and kind of everybody's on the same page, so that they kind of buy into a sustainable future that benefits everybody.
Thank you. Mr. David Smith, as you are expert of AI and you are CTO of iBeyond, and iBeyond have a lot of innovations. So how will the future cities balance rapid urbanization with environmental sustainability while ensuring equitable access to resources?
No, that's a great question. And the topic of future cities is one that I find very dynamic as we go into 2026 going forward, because during 2025 there were some very interesting trends that impact what you're saying. And some of them were things like a concept called a 15-minute city, a sponge city, and others. But what I see is happening, and the answer to your question really is, how will we begin to use AI? How will we begin to use sensors? how will we take and reshape the governance of the cities to balance the urbanization with sustainability and all the other issues that we're facing today as we look at it. And some of them is, for example, a city will be really built upon an infrastructure that includes smart city AI applications, traffic management, security, utility monitoring, public safety, all the different areas like that. But then we will also see a green infrastructure implementation, like permeable pavements, urban forests, green roofs, which I think is a great concept to be put in place. But you know, urbanization, the future cities and our cities are projected to house really about 70% of the global population by 2050. And with that high of a concentration, we need to really look at a way to balance addressing the challenges of climate, of resource strain, of social inequities through a new form of transformational strategies that we really haven't had, because we really need to look at how to use mixed use development, green and natural based infrastructure, and really look at how we use some of the things of Industry 4.0 and apply it to our cities. And how do we put the role in place of group intelligence to do that? Because part of your question was, how do we do it in a way that's inclusive, equitable? And the group intelligence is a key level of doing that. But you've got to pull together all the different stakeholders. You've heard me use the term technopolis on this. You've got to pull together the citizens. You've got to pull together academia, the small, medium, and large companies, and the government to really be able to address your challenges you put here of the balance between the rapid growth of these urban centers and the resources and the sustainability and really the governance that's going to be required to do this, particularly in a change of rapid introduction of AI, changes in industries that are going to shape these, so that many of what were the foundational elements of the past cities will not be foundational elements of the future cities because of these changes, Dr. Sri.
Thank you. Mr. Dev, as we are discussing about sustainable urban society and city, so how your Green Actions book can help you?
Well, I don't know if my book per se is helpful, but I know what would be helpful, and that is to design from the ground up. That we really need to look at issues like transportation with a whole new light. We have to get rid of the things that are making life unbearable today in cities. One of them, of course, is that we have a transportation system that's incredibly polluting and difficult for people to manage if they don't own a car. And that has to change. And I think that in cities of the future, nobody or very few people will own private cars. We need to figure out how to transport people sustainably. And I think that would best be done with a system like Transit X, which is an overhead series of pods that they're in every neighborhood, and you just get in a pod and go, and it goes along a main route to your destination without any stops or stations. So I think look at transitx.com. I think transitx.com as a possible transport system. But I happen to live on Disney property in Florida, and Disney always starts from the ground up. So when they built their theme parks, the first thing they did, because they built them in swamps, was they dug out the swamps and created lakes and then put all of their inhabited property around those lakes. And so they started from scratch. Now, we can't start from scratch in a lot of parts of the world. We're going to have to make do with what we've got. But because they did that, even though we're in Florida, the 4 Disney parks plus the town of Celebration, where I live, have never flooded, have never lost electricity. Even though we've had hurricanes come through in series, and we've had a very stable existence. And I think that has to do with urban planning. And we do it the way the Romans used to do it. The first thing you do is design your water system, and then you build on top of the land that you have built up because you don't want it to flood. So you do your drainage first, then you build your city. Unfortunately, a lot of cities have been built where the drainage is terrible, and so there's flooding going on. Well, you gotta either start from scratch, or you gotta go back and scratch your head and say, why did they do that? Well, they did it because they didn't own the entire area. They only owned a little tiny piece, and so they couldn't control everything. So we've got to get to the point where the urban area can control its flood zone and its environment, because that's what's wiping out or making life miserable in cities around the world, is inability to control the water system. So we've got to get water systems under control. We got to get transportation under control, and then housing. We just saw that horrible fire in Hong Kong that destroyed a lot of multifamily units. How can we create housing that is safe, affordable, and isn't in the long term destructive to A, the environment, and B, the people who live there? So these are the issues that we have to tackle. We have to start, I think, though, with building from the ground up. Now, if we're going to retrofit cities that already are dependent on the automobile, then we have to start from scratch and talk about solar powered or not gasoline powered transportation for individuals, and that's going to be a big issue in the future as we transition from the oil-based economy to the alternative energy economy. So those are the big issues to me.
Mhm. Thank you. Ron, I personally have experience to work with you in your solar skyway, and you have a transportation system. So how do you want to share your Podcast City concept for City of the Future?
Well, I want to thank Dave for opening that door. Turns out that the founder of Transit X was about 30 feet from here 10 years ago. Mike Stanley was visiting. We had a conference starting in 2006, but officially begun in 2007, international conferences called Podcar Cities. And the technology you're referring to is sometimes called personal rapid transit, automated transit networks, and more broadly, podcars. It turns out
Right.
that there are numerous companies now that are pushing ahead in rather remarkable ways, and the national leadership turns out to be in India, of all places. And while a lot of the technology originated here in the United States, and the granddaddy of all podcar systems is in Morgantown, West Virginia, now celebrating 50 years of service, over 200 million miles of passenger travel with no serious injuries, except for one, which consisted of a rock, a boulder, coming down a hill, crashing over a highway through a large fence and down onto the tracks, and at the vehicle, someone would happen to be in the front of the vehicle and had serious hip injuries and such. Other than that, this technology has been running without any traffic incidents for, like I say, 50 years. Now, we are holding a workshop in Alabama in February. If any of those listening are interested, they can go to podcarcity.org and learn about the details there. I'd like to go backwards a little bit and take a gander. After realizing in 1966 that oil was a finite resource, I formed an organization in 1968 called No Auto Cities, reflecting what you were saying. And it took me decades to track down the technology that would do this. And in 1994, 30 years ago plus, I gave a presentation in Mexico City regarding this technology. And thankfully, we have a representative of this budding industry in Mexico, located in Guadalajara, with a system called Modutran. And so this technology is maturing, and I want to give folks an understanding of what underlies all of this. And first of all, I think we concern ourselves right now about the invasion of cars into our city. I'd like to look at it from a slightly different vantage point and look at the infrastructure, which is pavement. And so if you think about it, the impermeability of the urban landscape by virtue of asphalt, which supports a particular transportation modality that is follow your nose from the age of ox carts, subsequently horses and carriages, then railroads, and now cars. That evolution has put us in a very vulnerable place, such that the opportunity for nature to express itself and for humans to be healed by nature in a wide variety of circumstances has been cut off. So if you imagine this system of transportation as being one of the drivers of the future city, then the first thing to come to terms with is the fact that we only need a space of maybe 1/2 of a parking space along a roadway per 20, 30 meters, and then another post, and from place to place, a station, which is not just a place for people to get on and off this elevated transportation system, but is furthermore a neighborhood resource containing a substantial supply of solar-powered battery or other storage energy that can, number one, redundantly and resiliently provide the power for the transportation network, but simultaneously provide the access to energy resources for the whole neighborhood. If a power outage occurs, this neighborhood storage system, and again, I repeat, it does not have to be batteries because it needs to go nowhere. It's not in a hurry to move. This is a stationary source of energy, which can be transferred to moving vehicles immediately through the system that I'm describing here. You can learn more about this at my website, solarskyways.com. And you can see here I'm wearing my official vest that has that logo on it. Now, so I want to say more in due course about the shape of the city, but to start this conversation, I'm going to suggest that not only must we get rid of these large boxes, whether they're electric, they're automated, they are sprinkled with fairy dust, or whatever you choose to do, the very fact that they rely upon asphalt, I will state here, that is the first thing we have to do. That is to get a jackhammer and get rid of the asphalt and bring nature back into our cities, and then provide our transportation outside of the people plane, outside of that surface where humans interact and carry on and can walk or use micromobility scooters and the like to get from place to place.
Thank you. Thank you for your interesting discussions. As AI is playing a major role for city of the future, so Madam Ali, what's your concept on AI, automation, and smart infrastructure? Ali Rice. I cannot hear you, Ali.
I'm muted, sorry. So I was looking in the research that I did. I was looking at 5G and the the application of that and how it's going to change things. So I think the kind of efficiency and sensors, so that there's traffic management and an understanding of what's going on with waste and transport, and so essentially there's what are they called? Hold on a second. Let me just find my notes. Essentially, I think AI means that we can monitor things more, so we can make them more efficient, so that there's less wastage. We reduce waste and kind of optimize the resources we have, so that there's less pollution. There's hold on a minute. Essentially, so that and food management as well. So there's local production. There's improved access to produce, and that's basically enabling things to happen so that there's year-round production in limited spaces. So it's minimizing transportation costs and emissions, and essentially so that what we produce is what we need, and that there's no surplus. So essentially, there's kind of a system, a circular system, so that what we need is there, and essentially there's kind of interconnected systems that enable things to happen as they need to.
Thank you. Mr. David Smith, as you have a huge contribution for artificial intelligence and smart city, what role will AI, automation, and smart infrastructure play in reshaping governance, mobility, and public service delivery in next generation cities, especially when government go for public-private partnership, how they can execute your technologies in a modern way?
Well, Dr. Sharif, in the next generation city, the smart infrastructure, the use of artificial intelligence, very, very widespread and very not only apparent, but particularly in the non-apparent applications, and automation of all different types are going to fundamentally transform the urban system really sooner than we expect. I believe by 2030, it will have widespread impact because it will be enhancing our efficiency, our sustainability, and the way we view services, the way we view responsiveness to things. We're going to see this integrated through Internet of Things networks. We're going to see data analytics powered by all the different tools that AI and sensors bring together to create an interconnected ecosystem that optimizes resources use, it reduces emissions, it improves the quality of life. And by really the end of next year, we're going to see over 30% of all smart city applications are going to be AI powered in some form or fashion. And it's going to be reshaping governance. We're going to see it used to provide a more agile, a more data-driven governance situation. And it will be shifting from being responsive to what's going on to becoming more predictable we're going to see, as Rob and I both talked a lot on your program, we're going to see digital twins being used to have virtual replication of what we're doing, to let us use simulations for urban planning, for disaster response, for ways to improve our infrastructure, and to see how many of these advances, particularly through automation, are going to impact our cities. The smart cities infrastructure, like Al and I were talking about before your program started today, with what we're doing here in Central Texas with autonomous highways now optimized for autonomous trucking and vehicles, and others are going to come there, which are going to make really much better decision making, like resource allocation, public safety. It's going to improve the way we manage risks, for example. AI can forecast maintenance needs for bridges and roads. It can help manage traffic flows, which impact much of the pollution we see from cars and trucks just sitting and idling and not going anywhere. We're looking at using ethical AI to ensure transparency as we do that. As been mentioned much on your program already today, it's going to be revolutionizing mobility in really very, very different ways. And as we get to networks that are more integrated to our sensors, we're going to see that. We're going to see how governments deliver services dramatically change. Again, becoming data driven as we go forward. And that's going to play. A great place to look at some of this is in Dubai, they have an AI powered smart city initiative that is taking these things and building the digital twin to make it happen today. And this includes not only the use of technology, but as I mentioned in my opening remarks, it includes the use of looking at different things, of doing rooftop and urban gardening as a way to enhance the environmental sustainability. It's looking at, as has been said, replacing as much private transportation as they can with public transportation, which is one of the key enablers to help us move through this. And it will dramatically change the service delivery of not just the government, but all the commercial companies as well. And even it will change how we respond as a first responder type of environment through enhanced sensors to become more from reactive to predictive. And that movement from reactive to predictive is where AI and automation, the smart infrastructure that you mentioned in the setup to this question, Dr. Shree, that is going to be one of the biggest changes to the future cities.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Dev, as you are working with Green Action, so how can future cities design a resilient system?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do in our country and maybe in other countries that I have not visited with rewilding certain parts of our system. We've urbanized so much that a lot of it has to go back to where it used to be. In our country, we have a lot of suburbs, and the suburbs have lawns, and the lawns are A, polluting, B, non-functional. They're just a way to hire landscaping companies to do some work. And that whole system could be slowly converted to rewilding so that people will take their front yard that used to be a lovely lawn that they put chemicals on, that they put a lot of energy into keeping pristine and beautiful, and turn it into either a vegetable garden or let nature take its course, and whatever is your local fauna and flora would then come to your lawn and take it over. It's automatic, I know, because we did that with our yard here in Celebration, Florida. We took out the lawn and we put in milkweed for butterflies. And last year we released 700 monarch butterflies that we had taken from egg to adult in our yard. And we did it by planting milkweed. And of course, they have a list of prohibited vegetation in our town, and one of the items on the list is milkweed. Well, that's crazy. And we also have just allowed nature to come in and repopulate the yard so that the butterflies have places to eat and lay their eggs. So we've created a natural habitat out of what used to be a pristine and lovely lawn. We've gotten in trouble with our HOA about that, but we don't care, because as far as we're concerned, it's much more important to create a model for the future of what we should do with these suburban areas than it is to obey the law. So we've decided that the rules are wrong, that what we need to do is get rid of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, because we're killing the manatees that are 40 miles away from me with the effluent that comes off of our yard. So I don't want that. I don't want to be guilty for the death of manatees. So my approach is let's rewild as much as we possibly can. Take those pristine urban spaces that are being unused but are lovely to look at, and turn them into vegetable gardens and turn them into rewilded spaces. We need mini farms, for instance, on the roof and in the yard to raise our own vegetables. Then they don't have to be shipped all the way around the world. I can get my avocados out of my yard right now. I don't go to the store to buy them. And I think that resettling of the urban landscape is really important where it can be done. Now, a lot of it has that impermeable asphalt already, and I think that, as Ron says, we've got to get rid of that in order to rewild. But I think that's something that we've got to deal with, is the fact that we have overpaved the planet, and it's time to get and we've spent a lot of time and energy trying to make it look like an English lawn. It's lovely. Well, I don't care if it's lovely or not. What I want is it practical? Does it make sense? So I think there's a lot that has to be done in countries like ours to restructure the way that people interact with their local, very local, hyper-local area, their yard and their surroundings. My son and I were walking through town the other day, and I said, "Oh, there's a fruit tree. I wonder if we'd be allowed to pick the fruit off that tree, because nobody's picking it. It's falling to the ground." He said, "Well, I spent time in Thailand and Vietnam." He said, "And there's fruit everywhere. Every vacant lot has fruit on it, and nobody cares if you go pick it. It belongs to everybody." Well, I think that's a great concept, that we really have to get back to the point where we give nature supremacy, and then we become like we used to be back in the day when before we repopulated, for instance, North America. There was an indigenous population that lived here for tens of thousands of years in harmony with nature. And so I think that should be the overriding theme, is how can we live in harmony with nature, and how can we go forward without being destructive. So that's my plea to the world, is let's rewild as much as we can.
Mhm. Thank you. Before I go to Ron, because I know Ron has a very specific solution for flooding, extreme weathers, climate change with his Solar Skyway, we have our new friend, Carla. Carla, how you want to introduce yourself and what you want to share for today?
Yes, good morning. Hi from Los Angeles, California. Very interesting, group. This is my first time, so I wasn't sure. I thought I was just going to be listening, but let me introduce myself briefly. I live in LA, and I've been working with developers just because construction does a very bad job in, it's a negative impact if we don't build more consciously. And I work with a company based in the Netherlands called Workwell. And what we're bringing to LA or to the US is innovations that, help with all these problems that, I've been listening from, in LA. I'm sure you're aware of all the fires. So just to, build more resilient, build more conscious, better, and also bring back green to the surfaces. As you mentioned, there's a lot of concrete. We've been also degrading, a lot of fertile land. So we have to change the ways we do things and also bring local, food, not only because it's important for the planet, but it's for our health because we're using a lot of the pesticides. So I'm happy to be here learning. And, I'll talk to Dr. Sharif to see, how I can be of more help. And also, it's time for action. I think people that are more conscious, just in general, and, from the different groups that I go, they're more in tune of doing different practices from construction, from the, even the communities, is just to take more, more action and also believe in collaboration. And so I'm happy to be here. I'm going to be off of the screen, but I'll continue to listen and learn from all the things that you're sharing. Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you, Carla. Mr. Ron, as you are developing urban plannings and specifically you have projects in Gujarat and you can understand this climate-related challenge in South Asia. So how can future cities design resilient system to cope with climate change, including rising temperature, flooding, and extreme weather event? Ron.
First, I have to unmute myself. Well, I wanted to back up just a second and make a comment about artificial intelligence. One of the challenges we have is that our decision makers have precious little knowledge of science and technology. And as long as that's the case, I think it would be much more productive for us to focus on artificial enlightenment and leave artificial intelligence to the humans.
Great.
Okay, so one of the important considerations that everybody talks about is having sustainable form of transportation. And as the co-founder of the International Institute of Sustainable Transportation, I suppose I'm obliged to have something to say about that. And the first thing I will say is that there are a lot of amazing consequences of recent developments and solar energy. We can talk about wind some other place. If it's windy right here, nobody lives here. Think about that. If you live in a windy place, you're probably living all by yourself, and you might have tucked away your house from the winds by being, behind a cliff or a bunch of trees or something. So let's think about how solar itself integrates with human settlement. First of all, one of the most counterintuitive and productive circumstances we found in the last few years is the combining of photovoltaic panels and agriculture. It turns out that with the increasing temperatures and moisture problems, having shade is essential for many plants that are in some places marginalized because as I said, the climate has become too challenging. And certainly for livestock, sheep, cattle thrive with a supply of shade. And I'm thinking on my way into the Amazon some 20 plus years ago, where the Amazon had been cleared and cattle were growing, there were occasional palm trees. And the strangest thing to see is a palm tree sticking up in the air with nothing around it but pasture land, and a few cattle hovered around the minor shade that you get from a palm tree. How ironic can it be? So let's look at the potential in some places where people are spoiled by modern living and they can drive a car out of the urban landscape and park themselves in a suburban or rural area because they have the energy from the future taken away from our grandchildren and our great grandchildren. What they can do is have a chance to reconsider our whole way of living and bring that that natural landscape back into the city, as others have said. And in so doing, notice that by getting rid of the asphalt, you can now put a solar canopy over the street and provide shade. Knowing Dr. Sharif, I observed last year in the summertime that the temperatures were reaching something like 60 degrees centigrade on the pavement in cities, and the air itself was in the 40s. And I read an article in a business magazine that said that business was off for street vendors. They were getting only 75% of their revenue, or maybe getting 50% of their revenue. Well, hello, if I can't stand next to your store on the street because it's too hot, well, maybe there's something more to the problem than meets the eye. And so that's an example then where by adding solar to a street and providing a canopy over the street, life can restore itself down below. Okay, so those people living, like I said, in these remote places who have the luxury, we could call it, to go and have their, cooler space and all that, come back to and they don't want to see the visual impact. Well, it's not the visual impact of having this thing that you're looking at, because you're already looking at buildings anyway, but the fact that you can have shade is a huge advantage. Now, if I'm putting a pole every 20 meters, 30 meters, I can also build this infrastructure above a flood zone. So if this is a place where people live and there's flooding and you want to get around, we can establish a floating platform that rises with the tides or with the flooding. And if you come in a boat to get to this platform, you can climb the remaining stairs, get onto our transportation system, and off you go without any concerns. And as you know, many tropical cities, especially in Africa, these informal cities are formed near a river where there's maybe a hill or something like that where the main city began. But now that the city is spreading out, people are moving out into the floodplains. And I've been in places in Latin America where a shuttle bus could get swallowed up by a hole that's in the flood zone, and you have to be careful not to drive into these zones because it looks like the pavement is maybe a few inches below the wheels, but it turns out it's a big hole and the whole vehicle could be swallowed up. We don't have that problem. So again, if you think of photovoltaics out in a dry desert, guess what? The photovoltaics turns the desertification around. In a city, the solar canopy powering the electric transportation system reduces this the impact of sunshine in the negative and enhances it in the positive. So I look, what we call this sometimes is twofers. We get two for the price of one. And that's kind of my second point here. My first point was asphalt. My second point is twofer. Use solar in combination to achieve multiple outcomes, desirable outcomes.
Thank you. Madam Ali Rice, what economic models such as circular economy and green finance and digital markets will define the prosperity of urban population in the future? And what's your thoughts specifically for circular economy?
Well, when I was looking at the research that I did, I think 5G's got an impact in the way that we increase efficiency and optimize the access to power and resources and things like that. So, and essentially, I think, you know, if there's passive houses that actually produce energy, selling that back to the grid, so you actually benefit from the fact that you're actually creating power, or, you know, if there's other ways of doing things, so that there's other ways of transport that actually get kinetic energy, or, you know. So I think the thing is that it's kind of tied to actually, and even, you know, if you sort your waste. So over here in England, there was basically an incentive so that people got paid if they sorted their waste, so that, you know, that they actually divided it into plastics and glass. Because essentially it's much easier to deal with your own waste than it is for somebody else to do it, you know. And so I think that I honestly believe that, you know, individuals need to take responsibility for their own impact on the environment, and in doing so, you know, communities do the same thing. You know, years and years ago, everything went into landfill. And I remember my dad saying, maybe like 20 years ago, he used to criticize me and say, if you want to save the planet, you can do it in your own house, but you don't need to do it in ours. And now, you know, in the UK, that there's, you know, generally waste is sorted from plastic, you know. And essentially, I think the thing is that kind of conscience, there's also food waste as well that's used to power energy. So I think it's one of the biggest problems was putting food waste into regular waste bins. And, you know, and I think the thing is it's much easier for people to take responsibility at source than it is for somebody else to deal with the problems, you know. And it is all about kind of being conscious and making good choices. So I think the thing is, and I think the food waste in the UK as well, there's so many people that buy too much food, and there's so much that get thrown in the bin, when essentially, you know, there's so many people that are on food banks in the UK as well. So essentially there needs to be an interconnected system. So if there's kind of a surplus of food, that people that need the food can get it. So, and I think that AI has the perfect opportunity to kind of make those links. So essentially, you know, the distribution's there so that everybody's covered. And, you know, that says, I think the thing is that the problem isn't that there isn't enough, that there's people that have too much and there's people that have too little. And essentially AI and data has the ability to kind of make those interconnections so that we can resolve the problems. And essentially, I know for a fact that, you know, homelessness affects people, especially in cities in the UK. And most of the home, you know, and I know in San Francisco, which is where we used to spend a lot of time, the homelessness is rife, and essentially that in this day and age there should be no reason for that to happen. So I think the thing is that's also something that smart cities need to cater for, because individual people don't need that much space to have a shelter, you know. So I think the thing is there needs to be some kind of system that covers everybody, instead of kind of leaving some people without and some people with excess of, you know, what they need really. So essentially, so I think everyone's needs should be covered in a smart city, so that, you know, everyone's provided for, and there's a kind of a minimum standard of what, you know, what people can.
Thank you. Mr. David Smith, as you are AI expert, how will cities protect data privacy and cybersecurity in hyper-connected ecosystem powered by IoT, sensor, and real-time analytics as your corporations helping to develop smart cities and many more things and data centers.
Well, Dr. Sharif, great question, because those are all things which, as we've actually heard with others today, make the smart cities, the future cities, harder to deal with. And how we look at to connect these in a way where we can use the technology tools in an intelligent way means that we have to collect data. The challenge with artificial intelligence isn't the algorithms that are being used with artificial intelligence. It is the data. If you do not have good data, there's no way you can have good artificial intelligence. There's no way you can do good digital twins. There's no way you can have the other things if the data is not good. And so in the hyper-connected smart cities, protecting data, getting quality data, protecting the privacy of individuals, but also the approach to how do we secure it and work it. So you have to begin to take an approach of a holistic way to look at the smart city cybersecurity approach. You know, by the end of this decade, there's going to be over 50 billion IoT devices placed in cities. And so cities have to prioritize frameworks like a zero trust architecture and privacy design principles to safeguard against threats such as ransomware, data breaches, and the whole security risk that we're seeing today. I'm amazed how many people can, with the new tools, even go and impersonate the sounds of our loved ones, and by data mining, have all enough information to convince us that we're talking to actually one of our friends as opposed to an AI bot. And as we go forward, we've got to really work this. So we've got to have not only things like a zero trust architecture, we've got to look at how do we create new ways to deal with threat intelligence, and how do we deal with the analysis of it? How do we look at how the responses are? Today, most responses tend to be individual responses or company responses. In the future, we're going to have to see more of a hybrid approach across the entire ecosystem. And one of the huge challenges, even with the growth of these digital tools, is we do not have enough cyber competency and awareness programs in place. It's clear to me as I hear people talk, there is very low knowledge of the threats that are there. What are the places where vulnerabilities are? Where do we have data privacy concerns? And in a smart city, in the future city, it also goes back to our interoperability and our legacy systems there, so that as we look at some of the outdated infrastructure, some of the outdated data systems, processors, these are going to really cause huge holes in our security going forward. And as you get your foothold in those, it's going to cascade across the more modern systems where we do not have a zero trust framework in most places. Also, the supply chain is going to be a challenge in the future cities, because you're going to have untrusted vendors, you're going to have device theft, and you're going to have damage at the physical level, at the environmental level, at the control system level. There, I mean, many multi-state actors target our critical infrastructure, our water, our power, our hospitals and others as a place to tack and to go through it. So really the strategy, Dr. Sharif, has to go back to things like the zero trust architecture, particularly as you begin to say, how can I isolate things? How can I go and manage my supply chain risk? And that one is both technology and human centric. How do I do things like make sure everything's patched and up to date? And how do I harden things like remote access? How do I respond to incidents? In a full-blown smart city, incident response and resiliency is going very, very challenging because of how deeply it's going to be integrated into what's done. So things like privacy by design, secure data sharing, regulatory frameworks are going to really play big in there. And we're seeing today more tools brought to bear, not just artificial intelligence and machine learning for detection and reaction to them, but we're going to see drones begin to use a lot to look at monitoring transportation support monitoring. We're going to see other innovations to come into place to help there. The next generation of post-quantum systems are going to really help. But finally in this one, Dr. Sharif, and it's something we've talked about in many of this, there has to be a new view of governance to look at security and a new way of collaboration, because really an effective protection scheme of security and privacy and all this requires a holistic governance, a threat sharing ecosystem, and partnerships to address the skill gaps. I mean, education, academia has a huge role in helping us address the skills that are needed, both very skilled professional positions who can help mitigate and discover threat, but actually even to the average user who understands that you cannot click on links from people you don't know, who understand that there will be people who can data mine you and say things, but you look and have to do a little bit of diligence yourself to know those aren't trusted people, those aren't trusted links. I mean, I love the fact that I get emails all the time from people who use my LinkedIn title, which, as you know, Dr. Sharif, is a wicked problem solver. And they come up to me and talk and send me messages based around wicked problem solving and innovation. But then I look at what they're doing and I go into a secure sandbox. It's nothing but bad actors. And we just need to understand that it's not just our tools, but we need to become more educated. Our governments need to become more educated. And I hate to say this, but our academic institutions need to become more educated, because our academic institutions are failing us in teaching these types of skills to our children and to us. So Dr. Sharif, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. My last two questions for Professor Ron and Dev. First, I want to give chance Ron, and then I come back to Dev, because you have very special green action things. So Ron, my last question for you: how can urban planner integrated natural-based solution, smart mobility, and affordable housing into a unified version for human-centric and livable cities? As you are from Swinson Real Estate Corporation, so what is your advice?
Well, think about this. There's a discipline called human factors engineering. And imagine that I am designing the cockpit of an airplane for the pilot. And I put all the instruments back here behind the pilot's head. Or let's say up in front, I have a blinking light to get the pilot's attention. Well, if it happens to be blinking at 4 blinks per second, that happens to be a resonant frequency for the human eye and causes seizures or blanking out. So when we design something, we have to look to see what is the driving factor. What is what we call in human factors engineering, the configuration driver. What determines the shape of things? So today, if I have streets in a crisscross rectangular pattern that you see so often, guess what? The street becomes the defining factor for the shape of the house and where it sits relative to the sun. So I can have a beautiful view, and I cut the view in half by putting a garage door there, and I run 2 cars into that, and that wastes half of my view, because instead of putting the house there and with vision outward, I've got an automobile sitting there enjoying the view. Well, they're inanimate objects, so what good does it do them? So today, the main tool that an architect or engineer or somebody laying out the community, the main factor they must contend with is the movement of a car. Now, get rid of that, what's left? What is more of a configuration driver than anything else? Well, of course, if you stop and think about it for a millisecond, that would be the sun. So I'm sitting here, and I can show you my blinds are covered because it's too bright there. That's the south side of my house. I live in the northern hemisphere. So therefore, I come into my home. It's been quite cold at night, but it's been sunny days. And I walk into this room, and it's extremely comfortable, clear through the night because of the location within the house. So clearly, by having this transportation system, which I've described earlier, to shake up the requirement for having a car coming to your doorstep, or better yet, why don't you drive the car into your house and make sure that it can stop right by your refrigerator, so you don't have to do any trouble to move your food out of the car from the grocery store into your fridge. I mean, how absurd can it be that we consider the automobile to be the configuration driver? We are offering through the Podcar Revolution, again, podcarcities.org for those who are curious, and solarskyways.com in order to see the system from the vantage point of solar energy. That becomes the new configuration driver for the city of the future. If we orient our buildings to the sun, then all kinds of possibilities open up. And I think you can see how uncommon that is today, but how necessary it is going forward as we learn to balance our lives with nature. Windows to the sun.
Thank you. My last question for Dave. Yeah. So my last question for Dave, like, what approach can ensure that future city remains social inclusive, cultural vibrant, and supportive of diverse community despite increasing digitalizations?
Wow, that's a tough one. You got to come down to the community level and talk about what's important for my community, not writ large, but writ small. When you talk about writ large, then you're talking about the profitability of the fossil fuel industry, which is now what is driving us. That the fossil fuel industry, for instance, we are creating these self-driving cars, which I predict 20 years from now will become a non-entity because they make no sense. We really need to have what Ron Swenson is suggesting, and that is a public transportation that is solar powered and up above the ground, and get rid of the asphalt. But that's all pie in the sky for the average family. The average family needs to know what they can do. And so that's why I've created the Green Actioneers program and the Green Actioneers Family Action Guide, which is just now beginning to prepare to commence to get ready to get started to be available, is 100 actions that families can take to go green. And then those families will learn to save energy, save water, save money, and create a clean, green future without having to rely on the larger network, which is fossil fuel driven, because they can do it themselves. So the way we've designed the program, every family comes to family night, like a Scholastic Books book fair at your school, and every family goes home with a copy of the Green Actioneers Family Action Guide. And then you think of it like scouting for the 21st century. And as you go through the book, you find things that you can do. And then your kid can put Post-it notes up on a chart out in the hallway in the school that show the things that your family has done. And as a consequence, they can go up in ranks. So we've established ranks that are like the ranks in scouting, like you get your badges for going up in rank. So you can start out as a Green Actioneer, then you can become a sprout, you can become a sapling, you can be a mighty oak. And these are tools for the future. If we can get the kids on board in this generation, thinking sustainably, then the next generation will be a lot easier. And so we have to bring them on board. And the way we do that is by not asking the teachers to do much, but instead, green-hearted parents go into the school with the Green Actioneers Family Action Guide, go classroom to classroom, show it to the kids, get the kids excited about what they can do in the future. Now, this is going to sidestep a lot of the issues that we're talking about today, because the issues we're talking about today are already in place. What I'm talking about is starting from scratch with a lot of this, so that kids go, Mom, we don't need that lawn. Mom, we've got to start recycling. Mom, we should be putting solar panels on the roof. We should be using better insulation in our house, like a radiant barrier, or we should be switching to LED bulbs, or we should be using less chemicals, and we should do things the green way, so that the green way becomes the overriding ethos of the next generation. That's my hope. And I think that although there's already a lot of infrastructure in place that argues against this, that if we can get the kids on board, then we have a hope. But if we are expecting people our age to solve the problem, it's not going to happen, because we are the ones who've made the problem. Now it's got to be cleaned up. So let's get the kids, give the kids good education for the future on how they can go green and maintain what we've built and improve it, rather than keep going down the rabbit hole. So it's terrifying to think what AI is planning to do for us, that the legacy systems are what we've got, and we've got to work with them and move forward in a clean, green way. So it's all about clean, green consciousness and moving forward as if the future is going to be clean, green, and bright, not having to be terrified of the AI future.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Madam Ali Rice, David Smith, Dave, and Ron for joining today's sessions. I request all of our audience, if you are interested to collaborate for developing the smart city with artificial intelligence, with podcast city plans, with green actions, and you can work together and we can make progress. Please share our content as much as possible. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, David Smith, and thank you, Ali Rice, for joining today's sessions. Thank you. Bye bye, and take care.
Thank you. Second.